The guy who you can count on being there, that's durable, that's going to play every single snap for you, and you're never going to have to worry about it. And that position is just taken care of. He's your guy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Albert, good morning. How are you, buddy?
I can't help you with that Cubs news. I'm sorry.
That's it. You're on the big sport, the NFL. We've got voting going on this week. Tush push, reseeding of playoffs. There's a few other things on the docket. How would you vote if you owned a team about reseeding the playoffs?
Well, if I owned a team, I would probably be sending a proxy to this meeting and be somewhere in the islands this week. But no, I think I'm for the status quo on a lot of these things. You know, I'm open to listening on the different ideas on the tush push and everything else. However, it still feels to me like this should be. It still feels to me like this is about one team, and unless you can make it about more than one team, I shy away from changing the rules on that. And then the playoff seeding, I do feel a little stronger on this. They should leave it the way it is. If this was about fairness, which I don't think that's what it is, if this was about fairness, I'd be all for it. I think this is about television ratings. And I think this is about the league being concerned that too many teams are resting guys in week 17 and 18. And if you had an open seeding system, then there'd be more to play for in week 17 and 18, which would obviously make the television product more compelling, which would give the league more to sell to the broadcast partners, and on and on and on. Here's my problem with it. Because the NFL only plays 17 games and not 82 like the NBA or 162 like Major League Baseball, there are major inequities in the way you schedule, right? So, for example, like if you're a team in the NFC East this year, you are going to play against the NFC North and the AFC West. That's 6 playoff teams in those two divisions, right? Okay. If you're in the NFC West, you play the 2 South divisions. Is that the same thing? No, right?
No, it's not.
No. So, is it fair then if, the Eagles win the division, the NFC East, at 11 and win 11 games going through that gauntlet, and then the Niners, sweep the 2 South divisions, they finish second in their division, win 12 games, and they get they get seated on top of the Eagles? That doesn't seem real fair, right? I just think it's the reality of the sport is that. The divisions are set up in ways where there are going to be big scheduling inequities. There's nothing you can do about that because you don't play 80 or 160 games like they do in the other sports. And so how do you make up for it? Well, you reward teams for succeeding within their own environment, which is within their own divisions, which is where the schedules are mostly equal. So that's the way I look at that. I really feel I don't think there's a huge need for a change there. And I think things like last year where Minnesota had 14 wins as a wild card, I think that's just the anomaly that you deal with every now and again.
Yeah, I was telling Dionne, though, I remember Seattle getting New Orleans in Seattle. The Seahawks went 7-9. It was a 12-win Saints team, and they're out. I didn't like that.
Well,
that sucks. But maybe, I don't know. Then could you do something? And I don't necessarily like this either, but could you create a provision where you have to have a winning record to get the automatic home game, right? So you have to be plus 500 to get the automatic home game. Or if there's a certain gap, then, and let's just say that gap is 3 games, there's some sort of provision. And I think that things, you get too much into the gray there. I don't know. I just think the reality of it is that, again, the schedule is what it is, and the schedule is not equal from team to team. It's just not. And so, how do you make up for that? Again, I think you make up for that by rewarding teams for succeeding in their own environments.
I agree with you on that. Okay, the Bears this morning did finalize that extension for Joe Thuney. Why is he so deserving?
Because he shows up every single day and plays every single snap. He is. You guys can go back and look at it. I don't have the percentages in front of me, but I think if you look at the numbers, it's insane. The percentages, Now, like he has missed some time more recently, but if you pull up the snap counts, I mean, early in his career, it was like 100%, 99%, 99%. I mean, he barely ever goes off the field. And so if you're talking about just a reliable, like the guy who you can count on being there, that's durable, that's gonna play every single snap for you, and you're never gonna have to worry about it. And that position is just flat out taken care of. That he's your guy, Mm-hmm. I think it's a matter of like reliability, and I think the ultimate thing for an offensive lineman, right, is like you never really remember much about them doing their jobs. Mm-hmm. That's sort of what it is with him, like it's just, I don't know. It's interesting. And I'm looking at the snap counts now, guys. So this is over his, 9 years in the league. 100% in 16, 100% in 17, 100% in 18, 99% in 19. So he missed his first snap as an NFL player in his fourth season. Okay. Mm-hmm. 97% in 2020, 99% in 21, 98% in 22, 97% in 23, 97% in 24. That is, insane.
Remarkable.
He's missed one game in his career.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's two. It's two games.
This dude's a beast.
It's just like that percentage is just, when you think about like what goes into playing that position, right? Like playing an offensive line position, like that level of dependability and durability is just insane. And so, and I think the good thing about having him is I think it has a multiplying effect on the other guys in the line, right? Like I remember, and maybe the Browns aren't the best example to come up with of excellence, but it actually became a competitive thing for the guys in the Browns roster, like where a bunch of guys had like these long snap streaks going where I think it was Joe Thomas, Alex Mack, and Mitchell Schwartz were playing together on a Browns line, and like none of them had missed a snap for like 3 years. It can become this multiplying thing for a position group. And, with the Bears looking to really improve in that area and bringing in Drew Dahlman and Jonah Jackson, having a guy like Joe Thuney as like the leader of that group, I think, it really can have that sort of effect of galvanizing it and giving you a chance to turn it around. For a young player like Darnell Wright, too, like you would think it would be great to have a guy like Joe around.
And you like the financials of it, Albert?
Did you see?
Yeah, it's fine. In today's day and age, look, the reason Joe Thuney is not in Kansas City anymore, and I think we went over this, Cap, when the trade happened, but the Chiefs were heartbroken to let him go. They did not want to let him go. And the reality of it was they just paid Creed Humphrey to be, as the highest paid guard in football, or highest paid center in football. And they tagged Trey Smith, which means they're probably going to make Trey Smith the highest paid guard in football. And it's really hard when you've got a quarterback making what Patrick Mahomes makes to have three interior linemen making that much. So something had to give. And just plainly because of his age, because Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith are smack in the prime of their careers, and Joe Thuney's in the back end. Joe was the one that they had to let go, but the reason they let Joe go was logistical. It had nothing else to do with declining play or anything like that. And I know they were heartbroken to see him go.
In terms of what this does, it drops the cap hit on him from $16 million this year now is an $8 million hit. He got 33.5 of the 35 guaranteed. When you create that type of space and you already have some significant space, is there a move coming that maybe we're not aware of? Do you think there's something out there?
I think teams sometimes create this space, maybe, but I think teams generally create that sort of space just to give themselves flexibility going into the year. And generally, like the way a team is going to look at that is like you're going to say, okay, like we have this space now, and if we need it, we can use it. But then, if we don't, we can just roll it over into the next year. So I'd say as much as anything else, like that space, like that they know they can push into 26 if they need to, but gives them flexibility in the here and now if an opportunity comes along.
In terms of Trey Hendrickson, there's been some reporting here from some of the Bears reporters that a third contract, that this would be his third big deal for Trey. Rookie deal, big deal, now bigger deal. They do not expect the Bears to make a move for him. Do you think he gets moved, and would you make a move for him?
I don't know. I mean, like, he's a great player. Obviously, 35 sacks over the last 2 years speaks for itself. I think when you have a guy like that who has waited as long as he's waited, and this has been this contract thing, like he did a Band-Aid contract 2 years ago to come in. He wanted a new deal last year, didn't get it. And now here he is again. So this is 3 straight off seasons. The guy who has to wait that long, that's the guy who's going to like say, okay, like I need to get every dime that I can possibly get now because I've invested years into trying to get my worth. And so what does that mean? Well, I mean, you can say, and I think this is fair, as good as he is, he's not Nick Bosa or Myles Garrett, who reset the market for the position. Nick Bosa 2 years ago, and then obviously Myles Garrett a little bit earlier this offseason. But is he as good as Max Crosby? Is he as good as Danielle Hunter? Because both those guys got right around $35 million on big contracts, and those guys are on their third contract as well. So, I mean, that's what makes it hard, I think, for the Bengals to move him and get value. Is you're not just asking for high-end draft pick. No one's going to trade for him and give up, like, say, a second-round pick for him without having him signed to a long-term deal. And if that long-term deal is going to cost you $35 million a year, now you're talking about giving up a $2 and $35 million per year and doing it at this juncture on the calendar when most teams have already spent their cap and cash budgets. It's just, I think it's going to be difficult to move him. And I do think that they'll find a compromise. It just might take the whole summer to get there. We'll see what happens.
We heard last week that some of the comments about Caleb Williams in this new book that's coming out and just what he revealed about his rookie year. What caught you the most in what he said about, no one watching film with him, or just kind of what a disaster that first year was for Caleb? And is this a big deal?
I mean, I don't think it's a great look for the guys who were there last year. I think that's number one. So I sort of feel badly for, Matty Eberflus and Shane Waldron and all the guys who are kind of still taking strays after last year. Yep. But it is something that, like, if those guys are going to be, in an interview for a job in the future, it's definitely going to come up for them, right? Like, what the hell was going on with you and the quarterback? Like, that 100% would come up in a job interview, you would think, at least. Going forward. So that's number one. Number two, I think, like, we all had heard this stuff about how Caleb was handling his process a little bit differently. And I think this is just sort of where athletes are going. And this is, like, I would relate it to, same draft class as Marvin Harrison, right? So you saw Marvin Harrison handle his pre-draft process and, not working out for teams and, and not doing a full-on medical for all the teams. And, a big part of that was, he was part of the first group to come out of high school into the NIL space in college, right? Like that high school class of 2021, that was the first group of players to enter into the NFL, having been like sort of their own corporations going into college. So, of course, that would be the group that would be a little bit more cognizant of all the factors and wouldn't just be beholden to, this is the way it's always been done. And I think Caleb is very much a part of that group. And so, we had all heard that, like, I think, going into last year's draft, they were going to handle things a little bit differently, and this was going to be, a different deal. And, that I think this is just more proof of it, like that they were examining all of those things and they were looking at all of their options. And, ultimately, Carl and Caleb Williams came to the determination that, no, we can't just pick our spot. I think the idea for them back then was we're going to explore all of it. And what it means for everybody going forward, obviously, Ben Johnson and his coaches don't have much to do with any of that. So I don't think it affects them very much at all.
We're just about out of time, but if you were an owner, you're voting to ban the tush push or keep it. What did you say?
I would keep it for now. I mean, I sort of don't mind going back to 04, what it was in 04, which was no pushing or pulling of any kind of a teammate. Like, I can get behind that. It's when you get more specific and granular where it looks like it's targeting the Eagles is where I'm at.
You're the man. Have a great rest of your day.
Albert.
All right. Thanks, guys.
See you.